as Pastor Foley has been announcing for several weeks now, he wanted to bring this message to us, especially to our young people. And I was talking with one of my co-workers this past week who attends a church nearby, and she's always talking about her minister and how he brings the message each Sunday. And I said, well, we're going to have an out-of-the-world sermon this coming Sunday. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, our preacher is going to talk about E.T. She said, tell me more. And I said, well, there's more to come. She said, well, if my pastor wouldn't be too mad at me, I'd come and hear it. And I said, well, watch it on YouTube. We'll be there. She said, it just gives me cold chills to hear about it. But that's what our pastor does each Sunday. He gives us a lot to think about. He brings a message to us each Sunday. I'm sorry that he's a little bit under the weather this morning, but I know that God will anoint him because he's prepared to bring this message to us. So, Pastor Foley, you come and take this pulpit.
I'm glad that you're here this morning. I'm glad that I'm here. Please open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. It's been a long week, and then yesterday was extremely long. I was one of 4 preachers scheduled to preach. A dear family member of the Williams family of Macon, North Carolina. Funeral was down in Asheville, North Carolina, and this Williams family for 3 generations has been a blessing personally to my family. And there were 4 of us preachers scheduled to preach. Yesterday, one of those preachers was sick and he couldn't make this funeral, and he was really the deceased gentleman whom I used to pastor. He was his best friend, and he was sick, and so I'm glad that I had the health to be there, and felt great all the way through it. Then we had long fellowship afterwards, and it was late in the evening. Carol and I got in the car. We've been feeling great all week, felt great all year long, and we just started coughing, sneezing on the way up. So I'm not at my best. Carolyn's not at her best. She's home in bed. So just whisper a word of prayer for us. Now say this. Just whisper a word of prayer for me. I'm thankful that I can be here to preach, but here's what happens. I've got lots of notes here. When I'm physically sick, I just say this, not to get any kind of sympathy. The Lord will help me, and if He doesn't, here's what we'll do. He will help me. He will help me. But I'm sick, and when I'm sick, when my body's not at its best, my mind shuts down. And you know that I commit everything to memory when I come before the pulpit. So when I'm knowing that I'm at that disadvantage, I've got notes here. Here's what could very well happen. I'm at the point where everything could just shut down, and I may need to just slip away from the pulpit. If I have to do that, I want to already apologize and beg your forgiveness, and I will just come back at some other time. Yes, I will be humiliated and embarrassed because I always want to do my best for you. Remember, every time I come here 3 times a week, it's like me taking an exam. And I am taking an exam. Every one of you are my teachers. And so I'm coming here from memory to take that exam. Well, my memory is not at its best this morning. And so if I have to slip away, I apologize. And you have to be humble in the pulpit. Anything can happen. Even if I were at my best, anything can happen. So be that as it may. If I have to just shut down, I'll come back and we'll do it again. Because this is about God. This is not about the preacher. Days like today, it just reminds me how indispensable and disposable I really am. Just as I preached a good man's funeral yesterday, one of the most praying men I've ever met. Somebody's going to be preaching my funeral one day. This is a reminder that it's going to happen to me. And I'm headed to heaven. So if I have to just stop, I'm sorry. Got your Bibles open, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. I apologize if I have to slip away. But let's get our minds on God now. focus on what he has to say, and let's look at the Word of God. Is there life on other planets? Is there life on other planets? And what has that to do with the fact that Jesus came to planet Earth? Luke chapter 19 and 10. The Son of Man came to seek that which was lost. He came to Earth, this planet, which is one of the 9 planets of our solar system. He came to this planet. He died. The book of Hebrews teaches us that he died once. Let's look at the scientific evidence and put that right along with the biblical fact. Now, since we're dealing with the creation story, just in honor of the passage, I want to quote to you from the Hebrew text. And I'll keep it open here in case, I have to be very humble with everything that I do. And any day, I'm not my best, I better be very humble. This is about just trying to do what I can for God. I'll just keep the Hebrew open in case my mind shuts down. All right, let's see if we can go. Hebrews, in the book of Genesis, chapter 1 and verse 1, from the Hebrew. It begins, Berashit Elohim bara wahat hashamayim wa haharetz. In the beginning, God, Elohim, created the heavens and the earth. 4 years ago, Damian Lewis gave me this necktie. Look at there. In the beginning. I wonder when I'd have a chance to wear it. And I was going through my ties this morning, and I thought, I just need probably just to wear what I wore yesterday. And all of a sudden I saw that tie, and I thought, no, that's it. No wonder I've saved it for 40 years. In the beginning. That's what it says. In the beginning, Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. God created the heavens and the earth. Are there alien beings on any of the other planets in our solar system? Let's consider our solar system. First of all, let's consider the first planet that is in the created order of which God put in its orbit. The first planet is Mercury. It's closest to the sun. And when I say closest to the sun, keep in mind that it's 3,000 miles from Danville, Virginia to Los Angeles, California. 3,000 miles. The very first planet closest to the sun is Mercury. And Mercury is 36 million miles from the sun. Because it's the closest to the sun, its average, and I say average temperature, is several hundred degrees. And in fact, it can factor out on many days to be 850 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, Mercury has a higher oxygen level than planet Earth. And somebody says, well, why can't there be human beings and life on Mercury? Because for most days, it is 850 degrees. You and I remember 2 Thursdays ago? 2 Thursdays ago, we hit 99. And everywhere I went, from Danville to Clover, Virginia, and meeting some wonderful people, everybody said, oh, preacher, it's so hot. And 99 degrees is hot. Can you imagine 850? No, we can't. Because life as we know it as human beings, Homo sapiens as we're called in biology, it cannot survive. No created being that we know on this earth can survive 850 degree temperature. So if there are aliens, let me tell you, the planet Mercury rules it out altogether. Let's go ahead and jump to the second planet. That's the second closest to the sun, and that is Venus. Venus is 67 million miles away from the sun. And it too can have temperatures elevated up to 800
800 degrees Fahrenheit. But that's not the full story, because its atmosphere is 96% carbon dioxide. So if its temperatures were in a mild enough temperate range that could sustain, it could have a variable that can sustain human life, the mere fact that it's 96% carbon dioxide, you will not find human life there, not as we know it. Not even as scientists can imagine it. So Venus rules out any possibility of life forms being there. So let's come to planet Earth, the third planet from the sun. We are 93 million miles away from the sun. Our average temperature is 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, 2 weeks ago, as I mentioned, we had 99 degree temperature. But remember back this winter, we had an actual degree temperature of 9 degrees. 9 degrees. Remember that day? I won't forget that day. I don't have a carport. I had to go outside. And I had to bust, not dig. Can you say bust? I busted, not burst. I busted a foot and a half of ice that was covering another foot and a half snow. I mean, I had fun. And then 2 years ago, remember, we actually hit something like 2 degrees, which is 30 degrees below freezing, 2 winters ago. So planet Earth has its polars, the North Pole and the South Pole. We have that. Oh, by the way, let me get back and clarify why I had a foot and a half ice over on a foot and a half of snow. Now, we only had 6 inches of snow plus 6 inches of ice. That's only a foot. But the reason I had 3 foot is because that the bulldozer that comes through where I live, it pushes a wall of snow up. So, I don't just go out and play in the snow. I have a wall to dig through. And believe you me, I did some digging. But it was all right. Now, planet Earth, we have the variables of heat, of temperatures at the equator that can be 120 degrees. We have the polarized temperature that we can have temperatures that go in excess of 50 below. There's some even record something like 100 degrees below Fahrenheit, 100 degrees below zero, minus 100 Fahrenheit. And you can have some polar bears that live in that kind of range. You can actually have some seals. But this is planet Earth. Everything on this earth has been aligned, not only in the orbit around the sun, but in its placement and the axis that is, its tilt towards the sun, that how it varies that brings us the different seasons of life. And that's why we have sustainable life. Our moon, by the way, is also 93 million miles away from the sun. And the moon, the next time, did you see that full moon last night? When you see the visible light of the moon, that is the light that's reflecting the direct rays of the sun. And it does not, scientists say that the moon is hotter than our heat, and it's colder than our cold because it does not have a magnetic field about it to the degree that planet Earth does. Let me give you, for instance, an example. Whenever you see the lit part of the moon at night, that lit part of the moon is 260 degrees temperature. Friend, we bake things like that at that kind of temperature. We can bake things at that kind of temperature. Now I know most baking is 350, but you can still bake or do a slow bake of 260 degrees Fahrenheit. And then on the back side of the moon that you cannot see, it gets down to 367 degrees Fahrenheit, even though is pretty much within the same range of our sun, again, because of the difference of the Earth's having somewhat of, that's called a magnetic field. All right, let's go to Mars. That's the fourth planet that is in our solar system. And I can remember in the 1960s watching Bill Bixby, the actor, play on the role called My Favorite Martian. And his uncle had two little antennas that would come up out of his head. and he could do all kinds of things with those antennas. He could hear things. He could zap somebody. And it was just a comical show. And it was just a fun show to look at. But all along, the media, and through Hollywood's dramatization of telling us that there's life on other planets and we're going to find it, that has made you and I honestly say, well, could there not be life on other planets? And let's go ahead and say this, there is, when we're dealing with biblical evidence and scientific facts, we are dealing in the area of probabilities. All right, probabilities. Therefore, my attitude and your attitude when we are coming up in an argument or a discussion, try to stay away from arguments, but be humble about any discussion that you and I should have about faith and God. Let's realize that not everyone has had the opportunity that you and I have had to grow up in a religious environment of Sunday school and of church worship services where a minister is opening the Word of God and pouring through the text and studying and hearing from God, and you and I just sense the Holy Spirit. There are so many people in America, now without God. They have had no environment of hearing from God or about God, so therefore they're taught in school. Back in my day in the 60s and 70s, if you heard about atheism, you didn't hear about it until you went to college. We have teachers now in elementary school who are dedicated atheists who are putting in doubts in our children's minds. And our attitude against this kind of world is not to come with arrogance and say, I'm right and you're wrong. It's to come back to deal with the language that is best served for you and I to be humble before God and to be able to touch a heart. You'll never touch a heart by having the attitude, you who didn't grow up in church, you're just wrong. I'm right. You'll never win anybody like that. The best way to touch a heart when given the evidence is simply to say, here's what's probably true. And we'll look at some probabilities in just a minute. Here's probably what's true. So our attitude is one to come as a servant, not one who has all the answers, but one who is leaning upon God. And if you find yourself in an argument against someone who maybe they quote a scientific fact you've never heard of, don't argue. Be humble and say, I haven't heard that, I'm not aware of that, but I respect you and I'm praying for you and wishing you the very best. And I don't say that in a condescending way to somehow lift me up above you. I'm just saying I really care, and maybe I don't have all the facts. Keep a very humble spirit. I'll tell you what turns this world off quickly is somebody, and now look, there are avowed atheists today who have a terrible, unmannerly attitude, and they have a condescending air about them, and it's just hard to be around them. You may know some. You may have to rub elbows with some. Maybe they're in your community. Maybe even some are in your family. But that's not the idea. That's not the idea and the attitude that person without Christ could end up there, an eternity without God. But let's have a humble spirit. So, probabilities. We're dealing with probabilities. I'm going to tell you, if you can touch someone who has had no environment in church, they have had no gospel preaching, they don't have anybody in their family praying for them. Can I tell you that it means so much to have some grandma, some aunt, some relative, some friend, some preacher praying for you? It means the world to have somebody calling on God for us. They don't have it. And what they see in me and you should be one of humility, saying, I'm just presenting something for your consideration, for you to consider as a probability. All right, Mars. It is 141 million miles away from the sun. It has an average temperature of minus 85 degrees. Now, somebody says, well, at minus 85, maybe you could have some polar bears and some seals. It's possible. But let's look at the other fact. Mars' atmosphere is 95% carbon dioxide. And do you know that's one of the frightening things about as you and I will get into from the fall to the winter, that people are at risk if they bring these inside, if they bring these little grills inside. There was a college student down in North Carolina just a few years ago when I was in Siler City. A brilliant guy, but he was low on funds, and he brought in. He had a closed-in back porch, and he left the kitchen door open. He knew he didn't want to smell the fumes that strongly, but he lit a little grill, and he was in 2 rooms down, and by morning he was dead. I have another young man I pastored down in Greenville, South Carolina. He did the same thing, and he's a brilliant guy, and 20 years ago, before I left the church in Greenville, South Carolina, he did the same thing. And to this very day, he is a vegetable. He's just a few years younger than I am. He's been a vegetable for 20 years. Carbon dioxide is nothing to play with. And somebody says, well, maybe there's a little Martian over there that's a lot like us. He's just maybe green. Well, he better have on some thick asbestos clothing if he's going to withstand 85 degrees below temperature, because many scientists can go to the polar regions and they have to be extremely cautious when you're getting 30 and 40 degrees below freezing. They can't be outside a heated area but for very long. They have to limit it. But Mars has no oxygen. 95% carbon dioxide. So if we have aliens, I can promise you this, they are not going to be my favorite Martian with a little TV program on CBS on Sunday night. Let's go to now Jupiter, the 5th planet. It's the largest of our planets. Jupiter is 484 million miles away from the sun. Therefore, its average temperature is 240 degrees minus 240 degrees Fahrenheit. Nothing. It is not possible for anything to live there. And zero level of oxygen. Nothing to what scientists know to be life form of an animalistic mammal creature can live there. None can. Jupiter has 60 moons. We have 1. Jupiter has 60. Some of them are asteroids that have been captured from outer space because of them falling into the gravitational pull of the mighty planet of Jupiter. It has 1 moon called Io, L-O, named Io. And it is the most volcanic planet in our solar system. Volcanoes erupt and explode constantly. And then its largest moon is Ganymede. And it's the only moon in our solar system that's so big, it even has its own magnetic force, field force. Let's go to beautiful Saturn, and with those lovely rings around it. It is 886 million miles away from the sun. Its average temperature is minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Hardly any level of oxygen. And what does it matter? 300 degrees is, my freezer, by the way, registers, my refrigerator registers 37 degrees. My refrigerator registers something like 19 or 20 degrees. Friend, we're talking about minus 300 degrees. And I will tell you, my freezer that is 19, it varies between 19 and 20 degrees. My wife told me a few weeks ago, she said, I want you to lay out a little pound of sausage. There's a little place in North Carolina where we get sausage for a good price. And it's just one of those days. You ever have one of those days nothing stays in your hand? I pulled out that little block of sausage and I dropped it. That was first thing in the morning. I was still in my PJs. Had on nothing but bedroom shoes. Headed for my cup of coffee. And I knew, I saw it, left a little note. She wants that sausage laid out because she's going to mix it with some other meat and make a different kind of spaghetti. I dropped that little block on my toe. I want to tell you that 19 to 20 degrees freezes things solid. Saturn, minus 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's jump over to the seventh planet, Uranus. It is 1.8 billion miles away from the sun. Its average temperature is minus 357 degrees Fahrenheit. It has a moon called Miranda, that on that moon it has the highest cliffs of any mountain range in all of our solar system, planets and moons combined. Mount Everest on our planet Earth gets 5.5 miles high, but this is the highest in all of our solar system. Miranda has cliffs that reach 6 miles high. Watch this thing. There is a slushy ocean that exists on Uranus. And somebody says, oh, well then there's a liquid source. Let's go take a swim. Not so fast. That huge ocean on Uranus is made up of ammonia and methane gas. You don't want to get near that. A human being cannot sustain that. So, none of our aliens can exist on the first 7 planets. Let's go on to the 8th of Neptune. Neptune is 2.8 billion miles away from the Earth, from the sun's rays, and its average temperature is 353 degrees Fahrenheit. Now notice with me, when I said that Uranus is 357 and it's 1.8 billion miles away from the sun, now we come to the 8th planet, Neptune. It is 2.8 billion, but it's actually 7 degrees warmer, if you can call 353 degrees below freezing, if you can call that a little warmer. And here's why it is. Because Neptune has an inner core heat of 9,000 degrees. And it emits those kind of temperatures, and those kind of temperatures get into that frigid air, and it causes a an expanse of heat that by which that eighth planet is not quite as cold as Uranus. Neptune, because of these escaping heat gases from its core, has mighty windstorms. Now, our last hurricane that came through, remember, it concerned us because it was 150 miles an hour, and that's deadly. That's deadly. That's almost unheard of. The wind speeds on Neptune reach 700 miles an hour. You're not going to find an alien on that planet. And then we come to Pluto, and I'm going to close with this. Come to Pluto. It is 3.7 billion miles away from the sun. Its average temperature is something like 380 degrees, minus 380 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, just a ball of frigid temperature. Nothing on that planet can sustain human life. Growing up in the society of America, where tomorrow on Columbus Day, we are all about having the scientific and mathematical discoveries just burst on the scene week after week. And it's phenomenal and it's exciting to see what is really happening. And we hear about a new scientific discovery, and you and I kind of sit on the edge of our seat and we think, my goodness, this is all exciting. And so when we think of somebody saying, oh, but there could be life on another planet, we could be seeing a UFO. Now, there are some unidentified flying objects. We don't know what they are. But they are probably, again, I want to say probably, I cannot come out here and I'm not a scientist. I cannot come out here and say, I can guarantee you there's no little purple polka-dotted guy somewhere, okay? I'm not going to say I can absolutely prove that to you, but let me deal with probabilities. There probably is no such little creature in the universe. Now, that's our solar system. But let's wait just a minute. There are trillions, not millions, not just billions. There are trillions of planets all throughout the heavens. All throughout the heavens. And somewhere, in some galaxy, is it possible that a planet could be so positioned like Earth that maybe some kind of form of life exists or could exist? And you and I, we want to be humble and we want to have an open mind. We need to say, it's possible. It's possible. But now let me quote to you Dr. William Craig Lane. Excuse me, Dr. William Lane Craig. Dr. William Lane Craig. I got one doctor's degree. This guy's got 2 doctor's degrees. And here's what he has written. He said, in the mathematical quotient of probabilities, that when we look at and study how that life, he calls it constituents and constants, how these life variables on Earth, he said if any one of these variables on Earth, these factors that produce life, such as oxygen level, temperature averages, our ocean's ability to have sea life and plant life, and the plant level to have proper photosynthesis that produces the oxygen. If he said any of that becomes one hair of differentiation, one hair's difference in any of those factors, he said it is He said it's just absolutely mind-boggling when you consider all the factors that it takes just to have life on planet Earth. He said it's even mind-boggling that we have life on planet Earth. But why do we? Why do we? Because in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now let me get back to probabilities and possibilities. If in the trillions of planets, if there could be another planet, and you see, we've been prone to think, well, Lord have mercy, there are just planets all over the solar system that's just like Mother Earth. It has to be. And there are little green men, so well, we just wait, we just hold our breath, and one of these little Martians is going to land on a spacecraft. And when we do, and when we consider that, somebody's going to say, well, wait a minute, preacher. Wait a minute, preacher. You just read in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And on earth, God created human beings. And so, preacher, if there's life on all these other planets, suspected other planets, then we can't take the Bible as seriously as what we've been taught. All right, let's get to that point. Let's get to that point. Because I'm going to tell you, that's exactly what our kids, now used to, you didn't get that until you was in the college and the universities in the 60s and 70s. You get that in elementary school now. Oh, well, your preacher taught you that God created the heavens and the earth, and God put Adam and Eve on the earth, and he said, go forth and multiply. That's why we have people here. Oh, but it's pretty soon, it's just got to be all sorts of planets out there where there is alien life. And so the Bible's a good book. It has great wisdom on how to live, but don't take it so seriously. All right, let's go back to probabilities, and I want to close with this. Dr. William Lane Craig says that as far as having the variables that are factors that can sustain life just here on planet Earth, he said scientists and mathematicians, when they do probability studies, they are absolutely mesmerized at how even our planet can sustain human life. And here's what he says. He said the probability of there being life on another planet, there's about as good a chance, this is what this man with 2 doctorates says, there's about as good a chance that you can take a .357 Magnum pistol and shoot from here and shoot all the way and hit an accurate bullseye on Pluto. He said that's mathematically the probability of, in fact, he gives this mathematical probability. He said the probability of life on other planets. Now again, let's be humble here. Let's be humble here. I don't want to come out and sound like, oh, I just want to tell you that I've got all the truth and I don't have all the answers. Friend, what I'm doing before you, I humble myself before God. And I humble myself before this church. I humble myself before any person out there that's an avowed atheist, whether they love me or whether they can't stand my sight. I humble myself before all mankind. And what few ears may ever hear my little voice. And I say, yes. Could there be somewhere in this vast universe the possibility of another life form? Is it possible? Let's keep an open mind because we want to look at scientific evidence. See, the Bible's pro-science. Christians are pro-science. We're not against science. We're not against science. Science is not our enemy. Is there a possibility? I want to go ahead and tell you. Sure, there's a possibility. There's a possibility. But Dr. William Lane Craig says this. The mathematical probability of life being on other planets is 99.9% conclusive. There is not life on any other planet. I want to say that softly. Because when you're dealing with somebody, don't come out and say, boy, I tell you, you people believe in Martians and aliens. You're just weird. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Because they already tag you and me as being religious. And I'm going to tell you, there are enough religious people out there that carry themselves with arrogance and say, boy, I'll tell you, I'm on my way to heaven. All the rest of you unbelievers out there are going to bust hell wide open. That's the worst attitude anybody can have. Paul the Apostle said it like this. He said, I would die and take somebody else's eternal perdition for them. Now, I can't say that. I don't have the love of the Apostle Paul. I mean, there's only one person in this world, and that's my wife, that I die and go to hell for. But when you and I are dealing with people's lives, and they don't have a clue about the Bible, they've never felt the Holy Spirit of God tug their soul. They've never sat in a service where they saw a saint of God that had a tear coming out of their eye because they were so thankful that God had answered a prayer and saved their nephew that was on drugs. So we come with a humble attitude. When we come with this attitude, and probability speaking, according to mathematical probabilities, it's 99.9% sure, Dr. Craig says, there's no life on other planets. And he says most scientists are just absolutely amazed that there's even life on planet Earth when you take all the factors and variables that it takes to sustain life. But you know why there is life here? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so I want to say this lovingly. When we get to heaven, all of our answers, suppositions, and questions will be wrapped up in the person of Christ. We will have perfect knowledge then. That doesn't mean that we'll know everything. We will just begin with perfect minds, begin to discover all knowledge. But now we look through a glass darkly. Now we must be humble. Now we must deal with probabilities. And according to the probability, God created life on this planet. It's possible there can be life on other planets, but it probably is not. When you say that to somebody who doesn't even believe in God and thinks that Christians are weird and hateful, all of a sudden you've diffused the argument. When you say, possibly, you're right. Maybe there is life on other planets. But mathematically, there's a probability of 99.9% that there isn't life on other planets. And be humble and say, we'll just wait and see. And at the same time, I care about you, and I'm sure you can help me understand things I don't understand. But at the same time, we'll just keep traveling Earth, and I'm going to keep traveling it with my God because I know what He did for me. Now, friend, watch this. When you tell somebody who doesn't believe there's a God, when you tell somebody, but I was born again. I know what it is to have my sins forgiven. I know what it is to sense God's nearness and presence. No, He's not some big giant spook that scares me to death and says, boo, but I do fear Him and I do love Him and I do walk with Him. He cares for me. And I care for Him. Dr. William Lane Craig also suggests the mathematical probabilities. He suggests that in all probabilities, there is a God. He did have a son, Jesus Christ, and we're going to look at that evidence in a couple of months from now. And the Bible is true. Now let me give you this piece of information. I promise I'm closing right now. There is a Princeton-trained man with a doctor's degree in mathematics who recently made this statement. I think it was the Brookings Institute. It was one of those think tanks. It may have not been Brookings. It was one of the think tanks, and you can find this if you will Google. If you will Google, it's called a station called The Blaze down in Texas. It's called The Blaze down in Texas. He recorded this, and you can find it. Glenn Beck is the man. He used to be on Fox News. You can get this, pull up Glenn Beck, and you can get this. He cites this. This is the documentation. This mathematician, Princeton trained, doctorate in mathematics, who is not a born-again believer, who doesn't care to defend Christianity, doesn't most likely even believe in salvation or that there's a God, but he gave the mathematical principles of what he thought and concluded mathematically is the probability of evolution taking place on this earth. Now again, we're looking at probability, and we don't want our temperature to flare as if we are on Mercury, and we don't want to just challenge everybody and be hot about it all. But here's what he said about the probability of evolution. Now, in the beginning, God created. How he created it, we don't know. We never will until we get to heaven. And then even with perfect minds, we're going to have to study it for about 100 years to get the faintest knowledge of how God did it. But here's the probability of this unbelieving, probably agnostic professor in one of the Ivy League schools. Doesn't care about Christianity nor the God that you and I serve. He said, there is as good a chance of me hitting a golf ball in Boston, Massachusetts, and landing it as a hole-in-one on our moon, which is 246,000 miles away from planet Earth, as there is that this earth created with all of its variable factors and life constants to produce life by evolution. Now, friend, I'm going to tell you that's big. That's really big. That there's a greater chance you can hit a hole-in-one on the moon as there is that evolution is the answer for why all of Earth has the right temperature, has the right oxygen level, and has the factors of all the chemicals in the air by which can sustain human life. Are there planets are there other planets with life? It could be possible, but it's probably not the case. Jesus Christ looked at planet Earth. He came to die. And where did he die? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Verse 17, for God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. So we're not coming with an attitude of arrogance, know-it-all. We're coming with an attitude that I met this lowly one of Nazarene, and he saved my soul. And it's probably true. He's the one who created the world. And I know he saved my soul. And I believe when I die, I'm going to heaven. And God is in charge of it all. Now let me tell you something. Mathematical, due to probabilities. If evolution is not the answer, which most scientists for 2 generations have been leaning towards, and now more and more scientists, they're just a minor number, are conceding that this earth probably didn't begin by evolution. And why is that? Remember the Hubble telescope that you hear about on the news? It is the one that picked up the radioactive information about the red-lit universe at far distance, by which we know that there is the expanding universe. Remember what I talked about on the light and the sun, when God prepared a light and prepared the sun, that there was a time of beginning. Hubble telescope is the one who gave the scientific world that information, that there had to be a beginning, that now the universe is expanding. It's like a cone. But you go back where the cone is not as expanded. That means there was a time when it wasn't expanded, that means there's a time it had a beginning. In the beginning, I don't know how it happened, but what I need to know right now is, in the beginning, God. Stand with me, please, and let's talk to him before we leave.
Oh God in heaven, we rejoice at how that year by year archaeological evidence squares directly with the biblical evidence. In fact, to this day, there's not one archaeological evidence and not one archaeological dig that makes a frown of doubt upon any of the biblical text. And science itself, as man, instead of becoming wise in his own eyes, looks at facts and data and information, concludes with probabilities what this Bible says is probably true. Therefore, God, we come to you and we humble our hearts before you. Help us, dear God, to love you, to humble ourselves before you. Where we don't have the answers, you are the answer. You will help us. Help us to have a sweet attitude and a sweet spirit. Help us, dear God, even when doubts arise, and they do in the best of Christians, to realize that you're the God of answers and you will provide the sufficient information in time. Help us to live by faith when we don't have all the information. But in time, God, you will never, never fail us. Help us, dear God, to have the truths of your word lovingly embrace our heart and nourish our lives. Because you are real. And we don't stagger at your promises. And while we don't have all the answers, and it's humbling, you expect us and demand of us to be humble in your presence. We're not God. We are flawed, finite, little human beings. You have the mind that is infinite, that is marvelous, that is divine. Who knows no limit. You are sovereign. You are omnipotent. You are omniscient. You know all. Dear God, we humble ourselves before you, that great God. Bless every heart. Help us, dear God, as we seek your truth in the wonderful knowledge of the existence of God. I pray it in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit. Thank you for being here. If my mind has gotten cloudy and I haven't given the information as best as I could, forgive me. Have any questions, give me a call if it wasn't plain enough. I just love you with all of my heart. I'll be back tonight. I'll be preaching just a very brief devotional. Forgive me for that. Go home and get some rest. And I love you with all of my heart. This Bible is true. God's word is infallible. His Spirit is present. Let's go forth in the confidence that He is God, and besides Him, there is none other. Let's be humble as we help this earth's population that doesn't know